and then there's this big, hairy man-looking thing just staring at me, extremely pissed off. I have the flare gun pointed up in the air, and when the flare shoots out of the end of that little pistol, this thing's eyes go from pissed off to the size of coffee cups.
What are you reporting?
Jesus Christ, you better...
Sir?
Gia!
Hello?
Get somebody out here.
What's going on now, sir?
That son of a bitch is about 6'9", I don't know.
Do you see him now, sir?
Yes, I'm looking right at him.
Uh-oh.
Range for night vision.
This is Boston Billy. You're listening to Sasquatch Chronicles. Let's go, baby.
Welcome to the show, everyone. Thanks for being here tonight. Got a great show planned for you. Back in 2009, Barrett's like a 15, 16-year-old kid out there in Louisiana, kind of looking up to Les Stroud, wanting to be the next Survivor man. And Barrett's folks and his grandparents, uncles, they all own this huge piece of property out there in Louisiana. It's about 2,000 acres. And so he wanted to go out there and try and prove himself, mainly to himself, that he could survive out there. And this is a very fascinating account. It's kind of a longer account, and I'm going to let Barrett go into the whole encounter with very limited interruptions. And as you listen to what is happening to him prior to him seeing this creature, you kind of get a sense of what's going on from the creature's point of view, and then Barrett obviously gives you his point of view. He thought it was a deer. He thought it was just some normal wildlife out there. Never really gave Sasquatch a second thought. It's a very fascinating account. Pay close attention to the creature's behavior as Barrett goes through this whole account. Thank you again for being here. Let's jump into it tonight. I want to welcome Barrett to the show. Barrett, thanks for coming on.
Thank you for having me, Wes.
Yeah, I appreciate you being here. And I know this is back in 2009. It's something that still affects you even to this day. There's no reason to be nervous. I know you're nervous. There's absolutely no reason to be nervous. I'm happy to have you here. If you would, take me back to 2009. And this is on your family property. Just kind of start from the very beginning and walk us into this whole encounter.
Yeah, so from a really young age, my dad and my grandpa had always had me outside, and they put me through the Cub Scouts and the Boy Scouts, and I learned a lot of useful skills and stuff in that. But I've always been drawn to outdoorsy stuff and camping and hiking and fishing and hunting and all that. And by the time 2009 rolled around, I was 16 at the time. I'd been camping by myself at that point for a couple of years, and I'd never go far from the house. At that point, I would pretty much be within what my mom called screaming distance at the time. In 2009, I really wanted to test myself as far as what I could do, because leading up to this point, sometimes when I'd go camping, I'd leave a lot of my basic items at home. Like I wouldn't bring a tent. I might bring like a bottle or two of water, but I wouldn't bring a whole jug of drinking water because that's just how I was. I wanted to hone my survival skills as much as I could because, be a little honest, I started watching Survivor Man from episode 1, and it just really fascinated me at how he did all that, and I wanted to be able to do that as well. So when I'd go camping, I would do that. Well, this particular summer, I wanted to take an entire month and see if I could do that myself. I knew the only way my parents would even allow me to do something like that is if I was fully prepared in a mother's eyes. So I went to ask Mom. I was like, look, Mom, I know you're going to be the biggest obstacle I have, so can I go camping on the land for a month? And I'll be back next month. She said, just go ask your dad. So I went and asked Dad, and Dad, being Dad, he's like, did you ask your mom? I said, yes, I asked Mom. She told me to come ask you. And he said, well, just so she'll be happy, I need to know where you're going, a roundabout location where you're going to be at. I'd prefer you take a flare gun just in case something happens, you get hurt, you can't move or something, you can at least signal that you need help and somebody will come find you. Bring you a weather band so you can keep track of the weather. A few MREs just in case I couldn't find food or fish wasn't biting and I just need something to eat. And at that time, I was like, you know what, that's fair, I can do that. Well, that night I get everything that I want to bring with me. In Louisiana, we have sweet gum trees, and a lot of places where I'm able to camp have them little gum balls on the ground. And I don't know if you've ever stepped on a gum ball, but laying on them hurts just as bad. So when I'd go, I'd only bring like a hammock, mosquito netting, a little tarp to put over the mosquito netting in case it rains. I had a couple bottles of water, a few MREs, the flare gun, the weather band, a backpack, some water purification tablets, and just really basic stuff. I had like a little tin of char cloth in case I needed to make a fire, or I was struggling to make a fire. I had the ferro rod and everything. And that night I didn't sleep at all. I was excited. I was like, shoot, yeah, I'm finally getting to do this. I'm going to be just like Les Stroud, I'm going to be out there just roughing it. And I was excited. I was a kid that was getting to do something that he's always loved to do. So I slept like 2 hours, and the rest of the night I was sitting there watching my bedroom window just waiting for even the smallest hint of sunlight. And as soon as I seen the sun coming up, I jumped out of bed, threw my clothes on, grabbed my bag, and I was out the door. I mean, it was dark, but it was light enough that I could see the ground without needing a flashlight. So I just took off, and where I was going is on the very northern tip of our family's land. My favorite spot back then was this like little peninsula inside of a creek that ran through this section of our land. And I liked this little peninsula because when I'd be there, there was water on 3 sides of me, and the foot trail coming in was directly in front of me. So I was protected from any major predators or like wild hogs coming in from behind me. I'd hear them coming through the water. And looking back on it, that was probably the worst place to be because I never had anywhere to run if anything happened. But and it takes about, as the crow flies, maybe a 4-hour walk if you're just not cutting any slack and you're just going and going. But I knew that I was wanting to enjoy myself, so I was going to be taking my time going, and I knew I'd probably only be there until a little after lunch. And that's what I did. I just really just kind of strolled through the woods and took my time, like I was I was enjoying myself. Probably about an hour and a half into this hike, I had the urge to use the bathroom, so I stepped off the trail to relieve myself. And I found a pretty good sized stick that I was going to use as a walking stick, and I bent down to grab it. And as soon as I grabbed a hold of it and was coming back up, something behind me started running through the bushes, and it was a bigger animal. It wasn't like a coyote or a fox or anything.